So after watching Silence of the Lambs for the first time, I really needed to switch to something a lot more lighthearted to just take my mind off the stress that movie put upon me, and I think this is as lighthearted as I could get. Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson, and this is my review for Disney's Hocus Pocus, which came out in 1993. The movie opens up in the 17th century with these three witches, the Sanderson sisters, who kidnap children in order to basically suck their soul out and transfer their youthfulness, I guess, into themselves, so that way they could look a lot younger. But they kidnap the younger sister of one of the villagers nearby, so a curse is set on them, but also that same villager is turned into a black cat and can never die. So cut to centuries later in the 90s, where this kid named Max, his younger sister, and one of the neighborhood girls, they accidentally release the sisters from their curse, and they're back to wreak havoc, but in the late 20th century. So here's a confession to make. I have never seen Hocus Pocus up until this point. And I know that's weird because I grew up in the 90s, I'm a 90s kid, and hell, I grew up with Disney, so you'd think I would have at least seen it. But really, Hocus Pocus is just one of those movies that I just blew off. I didn't have anything against watching Hocus Pocus, it's just I had my priorities set on other things, and when it came to Disney, I grew up more with the animated stuff rather than their live action stuff. But I know a lot of 90s kids have grown up with this movie, and some of them cling on to it, so I figured, you know what, why don't I give it a shot? Because I'm a 90s kid myself, and I want to check out this movie that I just missed when I was growing up, since so many people seem to talk about it. And hey, it's the Halloween season, so why not? And this is probably the point where my 90s nostalgia card gets taken away, but I didn't like this movie. Now hold on, before you guys get into the comment section and tell me how wrong I am, or how I really don't deserve to be a 90s kid, or some weird creative insult, you gotta keep in mind that I saw this movie for the first time just recently. I don't have the same nostalgia for this movie the way everyone else does, so I can only review it from the perspective of an adult, and it's just not for me. It's not god-awful, but it's just very paint by numbers. It's the very definition of a live-action Disney movie from the 90s. If you were to pull a handful of live-action Disney movies from the 90s to showcase to future generations on the kinds of movies Disney was making, then Hocus Pocus definitely fits that criteria. It's definitely more aimed for kids, and I'm not going to take that away from anyone, but it's got all the cliches you could think of when it comes to a live-action Disney movie from the 90s. It's got the outcast kid who's attracted to one of the hottest girls in town. It's got the cliched bullies who aren't quite at Stephen King's psychotic level, but they are definitely the embodiment of what the 90s was about in terms of the slang. This movie really is a time capsule for how people spoke back in the 90s, or what the cliche of us speaking in the 90s was like, and it's bizarre. I mean, I thought the 80s were kind of a bizarre decade, but no, the 90s are starting to creep up on that title. I imagine if I'd seen this when I was a kid, when it came out, I probably would have enjoyed it. I mean, I liked a lot of crappy live-action movies that Disney was putting out in the 90s/early 2000s, like Inspector Gadget, Max Keeble's Big Move. Props to you out there if you remember that movie, because that was one movie that I'm ashamed to admit I rented at least 4 or 5 times from Blockbuster. So I imagine if I had liked those movies, I probably would have liked Hocus Pocus as a kid. But again, as a 28-year-old man, this is just not that appealing to me. Now, it's not completely devoid of entertainment. I mean, the 3 people in this movie that keep this from being unwatchable are the sisters, played by Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy. The three lead actresses are so over the top, so wild and just downright goofy, but you can tell that they are committed to their roles. Those Anderson sisters in this movie are pretty much fish out of water. They're in a completely different time, and they're so confused at all the new technology or just the new urban environments that you gotta give props to these three actresses for really taking it as far as they go. And there are actually some jokes in this movie that maybe didn't make me laugh, but I was actually surprised that they put him in the movie. The jokes that I'm talking about are the jokes that a studio will slip into a kid's movie that they know is not made for the entire family, and the parents got dragged by their kids to see this movie. And the big joke in this movie is that they keep making fun of the main character for being a virgin. And it just goes to some really awkward, uncomfortable places. I mean, for a kid, you're probably not going to get it, but as an adult, it's just like, wow. But beyond that, I just didn't really care for this movie. All the scenarios are very predictable, and you can tell where they're going. And one thing I gotta mention is that this has some of the most horrifying early 90s CG. When it deals with the black cat in the movie that can actually talk, apparently that cat's head is entirely CGI. So whenever it talks or moves its head, it's just jarring. Like you watch that and go, what the hell is that? That is more horrifying than anything that's supposed to be horrifying in this movie. And this movie came out a month after Jurassic Park, so clearly ground has just been broken, and Hocus Pocus didn't even come close to what Jurassic Park accomplished. Now, in terms of an actual rating for the movie, I don't like to do this very often, but if you have kids, watch at your own risk. There will be some amusing moments in the movie. Out of all the bad live-action Disney movies that were coming out at the time, this is actually one of the better ones, I have to admit. But if you don't have kids, don't waste your money on this. There is really no reason for you to see this movie if you've never seen it. If you grow up with this movie and make it a tradition every year to watch it, then nothing I say is going to affect your opinion. You're still going to watch Hocus Pocus every Halloween, and hey, God bless you for it. But if you've never seen this movie and you're an adult without kids, it's not worth it. And there you go, that's my review for Hocus Pocus. Now, I got one more Halloween-related video to do, and I know I've been falling behind, but this last review is gonna drop on Halloween. So keep your eyes open for it, and I think I may have hinted at what this review could have been in a previous video this year. But first, I want to know what you guys think about Hocus Pocus. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and of course leave a comment. Don't forget to support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until then, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.